The most cutting-edge thing about Hannes Sjöblad isn't the phone in his hand. It's the microchip actually in his hand. The tiny implant is the latest advance in a biohacking technology that is steadily becoming a part of normal life in Sweden.
We have created a new implant, which is not a chip, it's a full device where you can add different lights, different vibration, different functions. Sweden is a very tech-literate society. And I think this is the main explanation, really, why a lot of Swedes are adopting chip implants.
Swedes haven't been shy about upgrading themselves with the new version. Thousands already have microchip implants that they use in their daily lives, waving their hand to gain entrance to the gym, confirm their ID or make payments. A short moment of pain not putting them off becoming part Swede, part machine. This event is an implant party, simply where ordinary people can show up and get a microchip embedded under their skin. The biohacking movement in Sweden is hosting them all over Europe, but it's at home where they get the most willing recipients.
I think it's really cool. You don't have to carry any keys or anything. It's just your body. In maybe 10 years, everything will be in your hand.
In Sweden, more than anywhere else, the future is already here. The national train company SJ has around 2,600 people signed up to use microchips instead of train tickets.
Did you see that?
And no need to mind the generation gap. 18-year-old Felicia and father Magnus still bear the scars of their new implants. Student Hannah Herving is also freshly chipped and now just needs to program it to open doors. Although importantly for a future career, it does already connect to her LinkedIn.
Some people say I'm mad that I don't know if it's safe and all that, but people have been putting these chips into animals for 20 years, so I'm not worried about that.
The long-term goal is for the new chips to help provide medical care in remote communities. They're already getting under the skin of the Swedes and may soon become just another normal part of modern life and of the human body. Paul Rees, Al Jazeera, Lund, Sweden.
The wild weather sweeping across this country. More than 140 million Americans bracing for dangerous weather this weekend.
Yeah, snow already slamming Denver overnight, and the storm also bringing intense rainfall, causing flash flooding in the south.
Blizzard conditions expected to spread into the Midwest today, and our weather team tells us that storm is going to intensify and bring severe weather outbreak for this weekend. Sam Champion is in this morning for Rob, and he is tracking the storm. Good morning, Sam.
Hey, good morning, Eva. Good morning, everyone. So let's talk about it because it's all happening right now. The damaging winds, the flooding rains, the blizzard warnings, all on the board right now. It's another full day of really bad weather.
Overnight, dangerous weather hitting 2/3 of the country. In Flagstaff, Arizona, a massive winter storm dumping record-breaking snow, more than 3 feet.
This is bad.
A rare sight for residents as heavy snow and whiteout conditions made the roads treacherous for drivers.
Water rescue going on.
Outside Phoenix, flooding rain prompting rescues like this one. Watch as crews stretch a line to rescue a man and a woman trapped in the rushing water. The two later airlifted to safety.
He said, don't give up, just keep going, keep going.
In Denver, at least 6 inches falling, the dangerous driving conditions leaving vehicles stranded on the side of the road and causing more than 80 crashes. This storm delaying at least 500 flights at the Denver International Airport. Meanwhile, in the Deep South, it's the rain and storms, up to 10 inches of rain already falling. Some Tennessee neighborhoods already underwater. The heavy rain and flooding trapping these two men inside their car. And just outside of Nashville, this truck overturning on a major highway. In Mississippi, the flash flooding submerging cars and buildings like the Bigby Baptist Church near Tupelo, flooded. And in Kentucky, heavy rains causing a massive rock slide, bringing down trees and boulders and smashing cars, all trapped under the debris. Thankfully, no one was injured.
Digital trends. China's CRISPR baby saga continues to rage on after the birth of gene-edited twins in China last year and the reported pregnancy of a second woman. The world scientific community voiced their shock at what sounds, provided it's accurate, like an ethical nightmare. Alcinio J. Silva, a neurobiologist at the University of California, Los Angeles, said, "We simply do not know enough to predict what would happen in a normal brain if someone were to try to enhance cognitive function by changing changing the genes at work
well, there's
in
also
the brain.
a complicating factor when we talk about anti-Zionism and the way all that plays into it. You have a situation, for instance, in the United States, where the President of the United States may have a Jewish son-in-law, and he may be the best buddy of Bibi Netanyahu, and yet on the other side of his political life, he's encouraging all kinds of bigotry, including anti-Semitism, violent anti-Semitism.
When he tweets against George Soros?
When he tweets against George Soros, when he basically sucks up to all the crypto-fascists around the world and embraces them, basically he's endorsing anti-Semitism. So that creates a more confused kind of environment. And also it has to be said that Bibi Netanyahu has not done anybody any favors on this. He's now in bed with the Kahanists. With a radical, extreme racist party.
According to Reuters, Iran says it has many options to neutralize the reimposition of U.S. sanctions on its oil exports, adding that Tehran's regional influence could not be curbed as demanded by Washington. Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Shamkhani, said that Iran has plans in place that will neutralize the illegal U.S. sanctions against Iran's oil exports. We have many ways to sell our oil. Iranian officials have threatened to disrupt oil shipments from the Gulf countries if Washington tries to strangle Tehran's oil
Fists held
exports.
high, this group of elderly Japanese protesters has issued a resounding no to plans to move an American military base to a remote coastal area of Okinawa. Dragged away by police, the protesters are part of a movement that has, for years, fought to reduce the presence of the U.S. military on the Japanese island. They say the new base still puts a disproportionate burden on residents and is also endangering local wildlife.
Every day, sand is used to create a landfill in the sea. It's destroying Okinawa's precious coral reefs and endangered wildlife. We will fight, and we will not let this happen.
This time, young people are actively working for the referendum. I think that means a lot.
Strategically close to Taiwan, Okinawa hosts more than half of the some 47,000 American servicemen and women in Japan, even though it only accounts for less than 1% of the nation's landmass. One of the island's current bases, Futenma, is located in the middle of a densely populated city. And over 2 decades ago, a 12-year-old girl was raped by 3 American soldiers in 1995. The U.S. agreed a year later to move Futenma to a remote fishing village. Construction there is underway, but many Okinawans want the base transferred elsewhere. The local government has called for a non-binding referendum for Sunday, and polls show that it's likely to pass by a wide margin. But the Japanese government has said that regardless of the vote, the base will be moved to the spot agreed upon 23 years ago.
According to Reuters, the Trump administration said that taxpayer-funded family planning clinics will no longer be able to refer patients for abortions, a move that critics vowed to challenge in court. The new regulation was announced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services as part of Title X. The program currently subsidizes health centers such as those run by non-profit Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood serves about 41% of Title X patients and receives up to $60 million a year in federal funds for family planning services.
According to Business Insider, in an effort to boost trade ties, Saudi Arabia's crown prince defended China's unprecedented crackdown on up to 2 million Muslims in its western region, likely giving Beijing a big reason to continue a highly controversial policy that activists have likened to ethnic cleansing and precursors to genocide. The Uyghurs, a mostly Muslim ethnic minority living in Xinjiang, are watched by tens of thousands of facial recognition cameras, forced to download surveillance apps on their phones, and not allowed to exhibit Muslim markers like eating halal food or growing a beard. U.S. State Department statistics estimate 2 million of them are locked in internment camps where people are physically and psychologically abused.
Skip class and help save the world's climate. The message of a 16-year-old Swedish student spreading through the streets of Paris. Her campaign is gaining traction across the world. She still can't quite believe what happened when she first started striking last September.
I would never have imagined that it was going to be this big. And I think it's incredible. It's a surprise every time I see someone else striking, and it feels incredible.
Greta says that action must be taken now. They don't have time for her generation to take power. They must see a difference now. And that is a view that's being supported by many people here in the Place de la République.
Je l'espère beaucoup, mais comme vous voyez, il y a un bon nombre de journalistes.
I hope the politicians will listen to them. Look how many press and people came here to listen to this kid, more than they listen to us, because we're always giving interviews.
Faisons des interviews et tout.
We think that it's our age, our generation that will.
It's our duty.
Yeah, it's our duty, our generation to change this world.
What's the matter of studying if we don't have any future, and what's the matter of being here and
having children?
And yes, if we don't have any future and if our planet will not survive, what's the point?
It was Paris that was the host city for the signing of the climate accords. But President Emmanuel Macron, besieged by yellow vest protesters, dropped his plans to raise the price of fuel to combat greenhouse emissions. On this unseasonably warm day in February, you can see the pollution hanging over the city. David Chater, Al Jazeera, Paris.
India has stepped up its response against Pakistan a week after an attack in Indian-administered Kashmir killed 40 members of their security forces. A senior minister has announced that New Delhi will block the flow of its share of water from rivers originating in the disputed region into Pakistan. India currently uses 93% of its share from 3 rivers under the Indus Waters Treaty. The other 7% goes to Pakistan. The World Bank Treaty gives India access to 3 eastern rivers and Pakistan access to 3 western rivers. India's decision will not affect Pakistan's access to the western rivers allowed under the treaty. Faiz Jamil has more from New Delhi.
Water has always been a contentious issue between India and Pakistan. That's why the World Bank brokered this treaty in 1960. It covers water allotment of 6 rivers. Now, 3 western rivers that flow through India into Pakistan, that water allotment is for Pakistan and won't be touched. This concerns 3 eastern rivers. Now, the water allotment goes to India, but the excess that it didn't use always flowed into Pakistan freely. India says that's not going to happen anymore. Going to take that excess water and divert it to its own people and its own projects in Indian-administered Kashmir and the Indian state of Punjab. And parts of Pakistan will really feel that because they are prone to drought and really did rely on that excess water. It also puts the 1960 treaty into a bit of a contentious place. Now, under the treaty, Pakistan has complained many times about Indian projects. In fact, at the end of January, a Pakistani team came to India and objected to the height of a dam being built. Now, those objections are likely to fall on deaf ears. It's part of the hard line that India is taking against Pakistan in light of last week's attacks in Indian-administered Kashmir, which India blames on a group based in Pakistan. If anything, this shows that they're continuing their hard campaign against Pakistan, and at the very least, they're not going to do Pakistan any favors.
They're calling for an end to their president's rule and denouncing his latest move. Only hours after Omar al-Bashir made an announcement that reflects how much these protests have shaken the government.
I declare the following: to impose a state of emergency for 1 year, to dissolve the national unity government, to dissolve the provincial governments, and we will continue to take measures to implement what I have resolved. Our country requires us to stand together. It demands us to remain united, patient and tolerant. I am certain we will be an example to follow.
For over 2 months, people in Sudan have been taking to the streets, their anger ignited by an economic crisis. They've demanded that Omar al-Bashir step down. According to Sudan's constitution, a state of emergency would allow security forces to arrest those deemed as a threat to the country and its political and economic stability. A new government will be formed, which the president says will work on fixing the economy. As he called for dialogue, some say his announcements are far from what those who've been demonstrating want to see happen.
I think that the demonstrations are likely to continue in defiance of the state of emergency for 2 reasons. The economic situation is not going to improve, and the demonstrations are basically based on economic hardships. So it's not just for him to say, calm down, let's have dialogue, when the people are hungry and the economic situation has not been addressed. So the demonstrations are likely to continue regardless of the state of emergency.
Al-Bashir has ruled for nearly 3 decades. He came to power in a bloodless military coup in 1989, overthrowing a democratically elected government. Since 2012, anti-government protests grew over rising costs. Security forces responded each time using tear gas and live ammunition. Hundreds died. The protests that started in December last year have become the longest wave of anti-government demonstrations since the country's independence. With a state of emergency declared, protests may be harder to sustain. And Bashir may have found a way to end the biggest challenge to his presidency. Dorsa Jabari, Al Jazeera.
Don't be offended if her social skills seem a bit rusty. This giant tortoise hasn't seen anyone for 100 years. She was recently found under a bush on the remote Galapagos Islands off the coast of Ecuador.
It's perhaps the most important discovery in years. Let's remember that this species was considered extinct for over a century as a result of volcanic activity.
The last living member of the Fernandina giant tortoise was last seen in 1906. The species had been listed as critically endangered and possibly extinct. Scientists now believe there may be more of them on the island because of tracks and feces they found.
We believe that we have to put together a new expedition to return to the site and see if there are any other members of the same species. Hopefully we will. If we find both female and male individuals, we'll be able to start a breeding program here in Santa Cruz.
The Galapagos Islands are home to 10 species of giant tortoise, down from 16 when Charles Darwin explored the archipelago. Thousands of tortoises have been killed over the past 2 centuries, both for food and for their shells.
Pakistani soldiers keep a close watch on Indian military positions, just 100 meters above the line of control, which divides Kashmir between one area administered by India and the other by Pakistan. Situated less than 500 meters behind them is the town of Chakoti, where the possibility of an attack by Indian forces is dominating discussions. Raja Aslam is 93 years old. Evacuation is not an option for him.
Definitely, we are worried about our loved ones on the other side of Kashmir, but we are not afraid of any threat. We are motivated and we will support Pakistan's military against any aggression.
At this nearby school, the children are rehearsing for their annual school day. But there's only one thing on their minds. Dressed in military fatigues, they want to send their own message.
If India wants to fight us, we are ready to fight back. We are not afraid of any threat and sleep very calmly at night while our military is awake and alert. We're not even depressed. Whatever Mr. Modi wants to do, he should. We are strong enough to respond.
Their teacher says life will go on no matter what happens.
Despite
the threats from India, our lives here are as normal. We still have a routine and come to school daily, even though the border is just a few hundred meters away. But we so far haven't seen any unusual movement of military.
The people living close to the line of control are used to a rise in tensions in the region, but are determined to maintain a semblance of normality. Tensions remain high along the line of control after a threat of retaliatory strike by India. People here are hoping for sense to prevail, but they're also preparing for the worst. People continue to go about their businesses in the town, but no one knows what will happen next or who will make the next move. Kamal Haider, Al Jazeera, Chakoti, Pakistan-administered Kashmir.
Find the sacred stick and you'll be this year's luckiest man. That's the promise of a 5-century-old tradition in Japan that gathers around 10,000 men in Okayama Prefecture every year. The gathering on February 16th was the 510th anniversary of the festival. The men wearing loincloths scrambled at the Kinryozan Saidaiji Buddhist temple to find a 20-centimeter long sticks called shingi. It is believed that men who find the sticks will be the most fortunate this year. The sticks are deemed to bring good health, luck, and happiness. The Saidaiji Ayo kicked off with participants soaking in cold water for them to be purified. The lights were later turned off before the two shingi were thrown in the jostling crowd. According to the BBC, the festival, which usually falls at the same time as the Lunar New Year, is also thought to bring good harvest.